Hi everybody, we're going to do another hand building project this week, and I'm going to teach you the Japanese technique called Kurinuki. It is what all the cool kids are doing these days. Basically, you make a form completely solid, which gives you ultimate flexibility. It doesn't have to be round, it doesn't have to be made of slabs, just a solid form that you create from clay however you want, and then you hollow it out. You just trim away the inside with a loop tool until it has an inside and an outside. So it's incredibly flexible, kind of like coiling or pinching, where you can make the clay go in whatever shape you want. And it always has a certain quality to it that I think you can't duplicate with other methods. So I'm going to just show you a really simple version of it, where we're going to make kind of a cup or maybe a little vase that's going to be really craggy and irregular, but hopefully it's going to have loads and loads of character. And I'm going to show you some of the things that you can do to alter beyond just hollowing out the solid form. So stick with me here. Believe me, it sounds weird, but it really does work well, and it's something new. So if you haven't tried it, try Kurinuki, and you'll like it too, I'm sure. One of the things that's hard to get used to as you're doing the Kurinuki technique is the idea that it's primarily a subtractive method of forming. So whatever size ball of clay you have, that's pretty much going to be the size of the finished product you have. Most of this ball of clay is going to turn into little trimmings as I hollow it out, but the size of the piece isn't really going to increase. So you need more clay than you think. I'm looking to make a very small cup or vase, and so I have about 2 pounds of clay, and it's really not going to get bigger than something that just fits in my hand. Options are fairly varied for how you can form the initial shape. You can very carefully, if you wanted to make a cup, you could beat it into a very careful cylinder and try to be creating something that would probably be better created on the wheel or by pinching. I want to avoid that pitfall. So I'm going to just go for something that looks totally different from something that I would create on the wheel or with some more traditional hand building methods. I want to just celebrate edges and corners and facets and just funky stuff. So instead of forming it in my hand up here, I'm going to form it on the table by sort of dropping the piece. And I want to get an interesting shape. So I'm just dropping it on all kinds of different faces. And I'm trying not to form a cube. It would be really easy just to drop it on 6 faces and end up with something that's fairly dull in the end. So I'm trying to do a little bit of dynamic, throwing it down on angles. I'm going to work it. And I'm at a point now where I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 faces. I've got kind of a stable bottom shape here. I'm going to hold it up so you can kind of see what I'm dealing with. Nothing is perfect about it. One thing that I'm noticing is you can kind of make out the texture of the canvas of my table. And I love the canvas for non-stick purposes, but I don't really love it looking like it was pressed against canvas. So I'm going to kind of go over each of those facets on a nice smooth surface. I've got this smooth cement board. So I'm going to just drop all those faces down on the cement board and try to smooth them out a little bit. That's looking a little bit more natural and less like I've just been tapping it on the canvas cover table. As far as hollowing out goes, lots of tools will work. The little square-ended tools that come in the toolkits are really great for getting started, especially on smaller pieces. If you've got a bigger piece, you might get something that has a similar shape, but it's got a little bit of bigger loop. This is a Dolan PT345 tool. I don't necessarily recommend going out and investing a lot of money in new tools until you've tried it. I can reach over and grab the kind of just comes in the kit and show you that it's going to work too. So there's the standard toolkit tool. Now, how we hollow out is really important. You want to be organized about it, and you want to leave plenty of extra wall thickness. You can always take away more. The point of Kurinuki is that you aren't putting more back on. So I'm going to start in the middle, and I'm going to angle the tool and get a little bit of a bite down into the clay, and then I'm going to follow it plenty far from my perimeter around in a circle. And I'm going to remove this little loop of clay. So you can see I've got about 1/2 inch all the way around. I can come back and take that little island in the middle away. And I want to work my way down into the form again and again and again, deeper, 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 maintaining that distance from the edge. So I'm going to come in again, down in on a diagonal, and then follow it around, leaving that margin, and then pulling out a ring of clay. I always want to get a nice hollowed out ring each time, and then I'll take the island out of the center. All right, kind of keep my edges compressed with my thumb, and I'll go in for the next little bite. So a little bit deeper, following it around, and then pull that ring out. Timing is important with Kurinuki. If you do a lot of work while the clay is super, super soft, it tends to get stuck, just like this is getting stuck. It's going to come out, but of course it's going to stress me out a little bit on the camera. So there, it's come out. That's why you want to go in really roughly to begin with and leave plenty of extra thickness near the edges, because this is going to just continue to be sticky and gooey in there and a little bit hard to pull everything out. Now I'll go in with this guy. I'm going to start using this for hollowing out the little island in the middle, because it's got a nice flat thing and I can just kind of cut it all off at once. But based on the scale of this, I'm going to continue to use this inexpensive toolkit tool. It's a little deeper, all the way around the perimeter, pull out the worm. My worm broke, but I'll get it out. They're having a tendency to break off because this tool is tapered. It's got a wider bottom than it is up near the juncture with the tool handle. And so when I cut around in a circle, it's basically like a little dovetail that's wedged in there. Now I can go in and cut my bottom off. When I do Kurinuki, I spend a lot of time looking from the side and gauging depth. So if I've got either tool, I can get down low like this, put the tool to the bottom, sight across, put my finger against the tool, and go, okay, I've gone that deep down into the form. I can place it then against the outside and can see I'm really about 40% of the way down to where I want to go. So as you get closer to the bottom, it's really hard to use your depth perception to see how far you're going. It's really good to come in and gauge it like that. So continuing on down. Dolan makes a tool that has straight sides instead of a sort of a triangular shape. And it's a lot more friendly for getting these worms out. But again, I went around the side. I'm coming in with that flatter tool, going across the bottom and removing the excess. Back in. I kind of think of this how you would quarry stone. The granite quarries always have these little steps that go down in. They take a layer out. Is this the fastest method for making a pot? Absolutely not. It's just a different method, and it gives a different style of result that we don't get other ways. So it's worth exploring just for that unique quality. Oh, that one teased me. I thought it was going to come out really nice in one worm, but of course not. Okay, I've gone around my perimeter, hollowing out the bottom. And obviously none of this is very refined or beautiful on the inside. And if it was a cup, I'd be really scared to drink out of it because it would be really rough and hard to clean. But we're just doing the rough hollowing out while the form is at this nice wet stage. And we'll do the final refinement once it has had a little bit of a chance to stiffen up. Switching back and forth. Perimeter with the little narrow tool, the bottom of the floor with this wider, flatter tool. All right, time to check that depth again because we're getting a little bit farther down. So coming from the side, siding. Oh, it's a good thing that I checked. I am within about a 1/4 inch of where I want to be. It really would be sad to spend all this time cutting down in and then go right through the bottom. So one more pass with this loop around the perimeter. And I'm going to pull that worm out of there. And I'm going to go in with that flat bottom tool, clean it out. Because that was sort of a finishing cut, I want to go around and try to make a final sort of bottom pass in one nice little spiral. And that's one of the signature looks of Kurinuki, is that you really see the process of the hollowing out. And so there's a kind of a interesting geometric spiral down the bottom. I go over it one more time, just make sure I'm happy that it's continuous. And at this point, I can look for areas that are extra thick and maybe cut a little bit away from the side. But most of our final refinement is going to happen once the piece gets to leather hard, soft leather hard. I'm putting my hand against the outside so I can kind of feel if the clay wall is giving too much, which means I'm cutting it too thin. And I'm looking at my hands and realizing I really should stop and clean all these dried bits off my hands so I don't transfer them to the outside. I just put one on there. And the whole point is to keep this nice and crisp. You can even use this style loop tool. Get in there in your corners, remove some material. Round ones, whatever shapes you need to get in there and have access and leave behind a smooth surface. And I'm terrible. I just get into this and I can't stop, but I really should. I need to stop and let this stiffen up and then come back probably after lunch and work on it some more. So I'm gonna pause the video. The downside of Kurinuki is you've got all this brain spaghetti trimming stuff that needs to get wedged back up, and you've got a pot that's not much bigger than the piece of clay that you started out with. But it's really weird and cool and different. And so let's pick up in a little while once things get a little stiffer. So this is now rested overnight under plastic, not wrapped super tightly, but it is feeling on the soft end of leather hard. It's all mostly hollowed out. You can see I've left plenty of wall thickness there to continue to refine this shape, but it is definitely ready for the next stage of action. So I'm going to set it down, adjust the camera so you're getting kind of the bird's eye view, and I'm going to show you how I would finish up this form. So I don't necessarily have a fully formed idea in my mind about how I want this piece to come out. I know I want it to definitely look like it was done using this hollowing out technique. And I like the facets that I have on the outside that came from that original smacking down of the form. But I still feel like I see the canvas texture, and it's not necessarily as crisp as I would like it to be. And I think I would like it to have a hollowed out foot on the bottom. So I'm going to basically just sort of play here and show you some of the possibilities about how to get this form to look a little bit more refined. And obviously we want to take care of things like this uneven and raised edge here. So I think I'm going to work a little bit more on the inside just to kind of clean things up. And because I don't want to make any sharp corners, I'm actually going to use the round end of this loop tool and just come in these corners and try to remove any of the hard edges, making strokes from the bottom towards the top and just removing material and then clearing that material out of the interior. This is very much like trimming or carving. This corner was the most problematic because I had gone in with this big wide square-ended tool and kind of made a mess of it. So now at this point, my wall thickness feels on both sides to be kind of a nice 3/8 of an inch. I have made this one face a little thin in the middle, so I'm gonna have to be very careful. That's my longest side and it's my thinnest wall. So I'm gonna have to be particularly aware of that. I'm really dying to cut some material off the outside, and I've got different options. I've got my normal twisted wire tool, which is going to give a certain look if I cut. You're going to get striations where the twists make their individual marks. I've got just a loose roll of this easy braid spider wire fishing line, and this works really great because there's just so little resistance as it passes through the clay. And I've also got that same spider wire attached to a cheese cutter frame. So I'm tempted to start with that. And what I want to do is cut down on some of these thicker sides and just take a thin slice off so I'm left with a really crisp edge and not cut too deeply into the clay. So you can see that's a really different looking surface than a smashed surface. You can kind of see the tension in the wire and sharp corners. So I'm liking that. I'm going to go around the rest of the way and cut some more facets. Going to go really gentle on this, and I'm actually going to cut it in multiple little swipes so I don't accidentally cut through that thinner area that's in the middle. That's the importance of kind of checking before you start, feeling for that thickness. One little tiny skim in the middle here. That's all cut. Move to this face. One more cut over on this side. I'm going to get this up a little closer to the camera so you can see the difference. So that really looks like it's just hewn from solid clay, because it is. Now this thing feels bottom heavy still, and that's good. I actually want to hollow out a foot. So I'm going to turn it over. I'm doing this in this sequence because right now I don't love the way this lip is. So I'm going to go ahead and try to define a foot. So let me just draw for you what I'm thinking. I kind of want to mimic the shape of the overall form in my foot. And I'm thinking about the proportion. I want to come in maybe that far, just kind of lightly drawing to get an idea of what that foot might look like. So in order to make that be a foot, I need to cut down and out again on each of those lines. And I think that's another example of a good use for the trim tool. You can either, not the trim tool, excuse me, the wire on the frame. So I could cut down and swoop out on each of those faces. Alternatively, if you don't have a frame like that, you can come with a loop tool, I'm gonna use the big one, and cut along that line and work your way down, removing material a little bit at a time. This is probably the safest way to do this job because you can kind of go and then gauge what you've accomplished. So now I've got, that cut down in like a little step. I want to go in and feel with my fingers. I think I've got a little bit more depth to go. I'm also going to show you how to do it with this cheese wire. Hopefully not go through the side. Cut down a little bit and then pull out this way. So that makes it kind of happen all in one go. I'm going to continue with the cheese wire, cutting down and out, down and out. And I'll just cut this one for consistency that I did with the other tool. My first cut didn't go quite deep enough, so I've recut that. Let me show you what that foot looks like up close. So quite interesting. It would obviously be a little chippy and hard to keep it not from breaking. So I would come back at leather hard or a little harder than this and touch back those corners and make sure they weren't sharp. But I'm liking how that's looking. So those, with it right side up, that's what your foot looks like. I'm gonna hollow it out. So I wanna follow that profile of the foot around. So I'm gonna cut down, go to that corner, turn, go to that corner, turn, get to the corner, turn, make the final turn, and then I think maybe with the bigger tool, come in and swoop around in a circle. Make one more pass a little deeper, but I'm going to check it first. Yeah, I've got just enough material there. Definitely will need to come back and smooth that all out a little bit, but it's starting to feel more like a possible useful cup here. Now, I waited on this rim because I knew I was going to be setting it upside down. If I was wanting to preserve a finish rim, I would have been working on foam instead of on a concrete board. But let's talk about how to finish a lip on something. If you're going to really drink from it, this big flat lip is terrible. I don't know whether I'm ever going to drink from this as a cup or whether I might want to just put a couple of flowers in it, but let's just pretend we're going to drink from it. We need a drinking lip, and a drinking lip tends to bevel outward towards your lip. So I'm going to take this wonderful little cutting tool, this Dolan 211 wood knife. I think it's 211. No, sorry, 220C. And I'm going to start in the corner. I'm going to use my ring finger as a guide. I'm going to follow each of these shapes. So I'm going to cut in at the corner on a bevel and guide along. I'm going to go around the corner and guide along. Go around the corner, guide along. Now I've gone all the way around. I want to come in a little bit closer to the edge and do the same thing. Hold my tool a little bit more steeply. Kind of doing this by feel. Now I've beveled this edge all the way around so that it's coming to a thinner, more finished edge. At this point, I'm liking the lip. I'm liking the overall craggy shape of the form. There's just extra clay in certain places on the interior. So I'm going to go back in with this rounded loop tool and start hollowing out the bits that I don't need. So that, come up here, move a little bit of that extra thickness down in this bottom corner. Be really careful at this stage not to go through the wall. It's so easy to do, and it's such a bummer if it happens. Be neat about it. If you drop any little goobers down into the bottom, take care of them. Is this the fastest way to build a cup? Certainly not. Is it a way that's going to force you to do something a little bit different? Yes, it is. And that's the point of it for me. I don't think this is ever going to replace the potter's wheel for making forms. But, you know, if you get bored of everything being round and symmetrical, this is a cool way to mix it up. That long face that was a little bit thin is definitely super thin. I just saw that it had ballooned out a little bit where I got too near the wall on the inside. So I've got to remember to lay off the pressure on that inside part. All right. Now, that's great. I've got all these corners. I've got all these bevels and angles. It just looks like it was hewn from stone, which is really neat. I just want to go around and all those sharp edges, I want to use a pad of my finger and just dull them a little bit. All the little corners, because those are places that are going to be prone to chipping. So just, I call it tapping it back. Especially the inside of this foot will look nicer once I sort of press that back a little bit. And then I do have the option to change it and expand it a little bit. I could reach in and sort of use my finger and stretch just ever so slightly. That's going to give it a little bit more feeling of inflation and life. Just stretches it just a touch. So instead of it being a totally flat face, it's got a little bit more volume. I like the way that looks. Also gives you a chance to kind of feel for the wall thickness, see if there's any places where you could hollow a little bit more out. That's really thin, so I got to be very careful. Oh yeah, paper thin there. Try to get it where I want it and then stop. Promise not to touch that face ever again. And final step here, I want to make sure that this drinking lip is kind to my lip. So I'm taking the pad of my thumb and gently pinching the top and smoothing that inner edge. So I'm pinching, give it a little bit of a flare, and making sure there's nothing sharp where it's going to meet my lip. You could come back and run over this top with a chamois cloth, and I'll demonstrate that just because I think it's important for you to understand that that works not just on the wheel, but also by hand. So I'm going to grab it. I'm going to make sure it's rinsed out really well and squeezed out. So I've got this nice long strip. And I'm going to hold it just as I would on the wheel. I've got my fingers on top and my thumbs underneath. I'm going to wrap my middle fingers around that edge and slide from corner to corner. This is a short one, so it's a short slide. Move to the next one. I'm trying to compress inward, and then my index finger is down on the top. And so you can see how much that's rounded out, that upper drinking lip. Take this one from this corner a couple of times, and this corner. It's not so much the rubbing of this chamois on there that's smoothing things out, it's the compression. So it's really important to get all the way around. I'm not just sort of going like this. I've got it wrapped around the edge. I'm squeezing and sliding so I can get that up close for you. Much more finished edge than I had a minute ago. At this stage, I think it's time to set it down again and walk away and let it get a little bit stiffer so that I can do any final little smoothing out and refinements on the inside, so that this will be easy to clean and potentially to use. I don't know how useful I would find a pentagonal, uneven-lipped, rock-shaped cup, but maybe something about it not being as easily functional would make it seem like more of a special occasion when I was using it. That's kind of an interesting concept. You know, we try to make things super comfortable, super convenient, and then sometimes we kind of forget they're in our hand. And that's what you want sometimes. But sometimes you want something that you can kind of celebrate its interest and its unique qualities. And by making something that you have to kind of think about to use, that can heighten your awareness of the object and make you interact with it more. That's all I've got for this. I'm going to show you one more time what it looks like up close. Basically like a cutout stone cup with a foot ring that matches the shape of the outside and a nice interior that you could put something delicious in and focus while you enjoy it. Thank you for your attention, and I hope you enjoy the Kurinuki technique, and maybe you can make something really creative for yourself.